Welcome to Unholy Hour, the place where true horror comes alive when the clock strikes dark. In today's episode, we uncover two chilling true stories that will haunt your thoughts long after you've finished watching. Prepare yourself, the Unholy Hour begins now.
You ever hear a story so messed up, so deeply unsettling, that it just kinda stays with you? Like it settles somewhere in the back of your head and refuses to leave? Yeah, that's this one. This didn't happen in some forgotten forest or some gothic mansion on a hill. No, this was just a regular little house, 30 East Drive in Pontefract, England, a small, working-class town. Rows of quiet homes, all lined up like nothing weird ever happened there. Except one did. Back in 1966, the Pritchard family moved in. Jean and Joe and their two kids, Philip, 15, and Diane, just 12. They were ordinary, church-going, normal people. The kind of family that kept their front garden neat and their curtains shut at night. And for a little while, everything was fine. Then, things started happening. At first, it was just weird stuff. You know how that starts, right? Stuff you could brush off if you wanted to. Powder falling from the ceiling for no reason. Not dust. White powder, like chalk, drifting down in perfectly still air. Philip and his grandma were the only ones home when that happened. He swore it was like it was raining inside, but just in that one room. Then the kitchen sink started turning itself on. Full blast, hot water, steam everywhere. They'd shut it off, leave, come back 5 minutes later, and it'd be gushing again. No one near it, no faulty plumbing, just on. And then it got worse. Glasses started exploding, literally shattering on shelves without anyone touching them. Lights would flicker, then blow out completely. Furniture moved in front of their eyes. Chairs pulled back from the table. A dresser in Philip's room was found lying on its side. Drawers spilled everywhere, like someone had thrown it across the room. But no one had. And that's when the family started to feel it, the presence. They'd walk into a room and feel like they weren't alone, like someone was standing in the corner, breathing, watching. And they were. It wasn't long before they saw it. First, just shadows. Something tall, darker than the dark, standing at the end of the hallway, at the top of the stairs, always still, always silent. Just watching. But then it showed itself more clearly. Jean, the mother, saw it one night while cleaning. She turned toward the living room and saw this figure, tall, dressed in black, like an old monk's robe. Hood pulled low, no face. Just a blank darkness where a face should be. It didn't move, didn't make a sound. It just stood there and vanished. They called it the Black Monk. And that's when Diane became the target. This girl, 12 years old, sweet, quiet, normal. She began having these terrifying experiences. Cold spots would follow her around the house. Doors would slam shut behind her. But the worst part?
She started getting attacked. And I don't mean pushed or scratched, like in the movies. I mean full-on violence. One afternoon, Zhang heard screaming from Diane's room, ran up the stairs and found Diane being dragged across the floor by her hair. There was nothing there. No hands, no ropes, no wires, just the sound of her fingernails scratching at the carpet as she screamed for help. They pulled her back, held her, and watched as red fingerprints started appearing on her throat. That was the moment they realized this thing wasn't just a ghost. It was something else. They brought in a priest. Not just any priest, someone experienced with hauntings. But he took one look at that house and stood in the doorway and said something that stuck with the family for years. This thing isn't of God. It never was. He refused to go inside. Refused.
And here's the part that chills me the most. Everyone who came to help them left worse than they came. Investigators got sick inside the house. One even passed out and had to be dragged out the front door. Paranormal teams watched their equipment shut off for no reason, or worse, start recording on its own. You know what they caught? Breathing, growling, and something that sounded like chanting in Latin. People started digging into the history of the land. That's when they found the theory, the Cluniac monk. Supposedly, hundreds of years earlier, a monk had been caught raping and murdering a young girl near that property. As punishment, he was buried alive, right beneath what would eventually become 30 East Drive. And Diane, she matched the victim's age, that same terrifying pattern. You see it now, right? This wasn't just a haunting, it was a possession, a reenactment, like something ancient, angry, and obsessed was reliving its own twisted past, using this innocent girl as a puppet. Eventually, the Pritchards moved out. They couldn't take it anymore. Would you? But here's what blows my mind. The house, it's still there. People still visit it. You can literally rent it and spend the night. And guess what?
It's still active. People report doors slamming shut, temperature drops, growling, hands grabbing them in the dark, shadows standing at the edge of the bed. One guy ran out after 20 minutes and swore he felt something breathe into his ear and whisper, "You don't belong here." No one does, because the Black Monk never left.
Story 2.
It was supposed to be a fresh start. A young man, newly single and broke, moved into a crumbling apartment building on the south side of Chicago. It wasn't much. Cracked walls, flickering hallway lights, old radiators that hissed and groaned through the night. But it was cheap. And in his situation, that was enough. He moved into Unit 309. Directly across the hall was apartment 313. From the very first day, 313 felt wrong. Not loud, not violent, just still. Too still. The door never opened, no footsteps, no music. But somehow, there was always a sense that someone was inside, watching from behind that door. Sometimes a TV flickered through the bottom of the door, casting light onto the hallway floor. But the mail piled up outside. Packages went untouched. No one ever answered a knock. When he finally asked the landlord who lived there, the answer came flatly. That unit's been vacant for years. But someone, was still inside. It started with a whisper. Late one night, as he fumbled with his keys outside his apartment, he heard a voice from behind. A woman's voice, soft, barely audible.
"Can you hear me?" He turned. There was no one there, only the door to apartment 313, slightly ajar. The voice returned, closer this time. "I know you can hear me." He didn't sleep that night, and the door to 313 was shut tight the next morning, as if nothing had happened. Days later, the strange events continued, only now inside his own apartment. He was brushing his teeth, staring into the bathroom mirror when the words appeared. "You left me behind." There was no voice this time, just the message, fogged into the glass as if someone had breathed it there. But he was alone. He began asking the other tenants about 313. Most refused to speak. Some shut their doors before he could even finish the question. But one elderly man in Unit 311 finally told the story. Her name had been Renee. She lived alone, quiet, friendly but private. And then one day, she simply vanished. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. Days later, someone broke the door down and found her cat, starving and locked inside. Nothing else. Just a table, a single chair, and since then, strange things. Whispers through the halls, crying, breathing,
always from 313. The haunting escalated. Lights in 309 began turning on by themselves. His phone would buzz with no new messages. And in the reflection of the TV, he started to see a figure, only for a moment. A pale woman with long, dark hair and empty eyes. Not angry, just waiting. One night, the sound of a lock turning woke him from sleep. His own front door, unlocking. Then, soft footsteps, slow, careful. They crept across the wooden floor, stopping just outside his bedroom. Then, his door creaked open, and a voice right beside the bed. "You can hear me now." He never saw her, but he felt the breath on his skin. That night, he ran, left the apartment behind, moved out without ever stepping foot inside again. A friend was sent back to collect his things. She said the place was cold. And every mirror, every single one, was fogged. Even the ones inside boxes. Some say apartment 313 was never truly empty, that Renee's loneliness never left, and that sometimes she still whispers through the walls, "Can you hear me?" And if you do, don't answer.